April, you want to start?
Sure. April Ladd, DOE Paducah Site Lead.
I'm Ben Stinnett, I'm CAB Chair.
John Barker, cab member. Mike Combs, cab.
Kay Brewer, cab. Joyce Burnlight, cab.
Reese Henderson, cab. Myron Russell, cab. Eric Butterball, cab. Rodney Hill, cab.
Haley Wiggins, UHS.
Eric Roberts, EHI.
Robert Hernandez, prospective member for cab.
Molly Thompson, prospective member for CAP. Darren Bowen, prospective member for CAP. Leonard Redfield, FRP program manager.
Then where CVS?
Mary Evans, Kentucky Department of Environmental Protection.
My friend Amina Watkins. Nice to meet you.
Who doesn't know Amina Watkins? She needs no introduction.
Eric, do we want to do the folks online as well?
Yeah, let's knock that out. All right, so online, first of all, we have Julie Galloway is with EHI. She's handling the teams to stream, posting on YouTube. And then we have Brian Begley with US EPA. Brian, how are you, sir? Caught him off guard.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button. Yeah, hi, I'm here.
Perfect. All right. So with looks like with Kentucky we have Sonia Smiley. Hey, Sonia.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good. Thanks.
I'm
for
doing
joining us.
well.
All right. We have Brandon Marshall.
Hi, how are you all?
Perfect. Also with the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and then looks like John Sayer with the EPA. Hey, John.
Hey, good evening, everyone.
Is there anyone else on the team's call who I haven't identified? Okay.
You ready?
Yeah. All right. So first up, DOE comments.
Gotta get my notes together right now. So just the progress segmentation on converter segmented, we completed 272. And we have 262 in storage. We continue to process at the rate, our desired rate, so that's going well. A lot of focus on potential lease of about 80 acres, so we're still working some of that. And the environmental baseline survey for the transfer of parcel 1 should be going to Kentucky and EPA either the end of this week, as in tomorrow, or the beginning of next week. So, feeling pretty good about that one. And those are most of the highlights. What's been going on lately?
Perfect. Any questions for April on either of those topics?
Where's the 80 acres?
3A.
Oh, okay.
Just this side of the cylinder yard, right?
Mhm.
Just south of it, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right. Liaison comments. We'll start with Sonia. Sonia, anything from Kentucky?
I don't have anything.
Okay. EPA, Brian, anything you need to add or want to share?
Just second, the property transfers have been high priority for EPA, so we've been aggressively reviewing those, and lots of discussions with DOE and their contractors. And then the whole decision 2029, there's been 2 documents recently submitted, and we are aggressively reviewing those as well.
Excellent. Any questions for Sonia or Brian? That's quiet. Saving it all for later. I like it. All right, presentation time. All right, so the waste disposal. We've had a series of educational sessions where we've talked about all, and this is kind of a recap of the highlights of everything we've talked about over the last, off and on the last several months, and kind of the summation of what we've talked about. And so As we're going to discuss a recommendation dealing with this, we're going to kind of read this into the record and have a public discussion on this. So, with that.
Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Ultimately, the goal is select a location to move forward for design and engineering purposes. And so we'll start out looking at Portsmouth, and they're in the process of waste placement and their cell area. In total, with all of the support locations and everything, the upfront kind of acreage is about 300 acres that's needed to manage and do everything needed to be able to support waste placement. At the end of the day, once all waste is placed and the cell's capped and covered and everything, the cell itself is roughly about 100 acres. But during construction and during placement, it requires a lot of extra laydown space, areas for water management, areas to process soil so it meets the specifications for the different layer requirements, locations for office workers that support the construction, and so you can kind of see here the 100 acres for the cell proper, and then about 200 for the support area. So 300 kind of total during construction and placement. But at the end of the day, it then just becomes about 100. So there's a lot of activities associated with construction and placement, water management, those types of things. So we'll go to the next slide. In 2014, Paducah submitted RIFS, Remedial Investigation Feasibility Study, for an on-site waste disposal decision. And at that time, all of these areas represent the locations that was evaluated. And Amy's clicking through to click through all the different ones. But from that study, it got narrowed down to about 5 locations. And so location 1 passed, 3A passed. They took a combination of 5 and 6 because those are active power lines, and made a 5A where they sliced a corner of the rectangle off to omit the power lines there. And then 9 passed and 11 passed. And so from all of those sites that were evaluated, it was reduced to 5. And then we'll go to the next slide. And that was further reduced based on other factors. So site 1 was kind of thrown out because of overhead lines. There's active rail in that vicinity, the actual size of the acreage that's available there, and the potential to have the extra acreage for laydown areas and support during construction and placement. And then 3A, 3A is one we're working currently as a potential lease area. It's just south of the Duff 6 cylinder yard, kind of potential for redevelopment there, that one. And then site 9 is in the northwest corner of the plant, which is where all of our burial yards are, burial grounds, where literally just dig a hole and put stuff in it. And so it poses challenges because of that contamination underneath there, just with construction and all those things. So once you kind of rule those 3 out, it becomes pretty clear that 5A and 11 are the 2 that's left as potential candidates to move forward for engineering and design purposes. And that also coincides with, prior CAB recommendations to the department based on all the data at that point in time. So again, this is kind of just pointing out the acreage required in total: 100 for the actual cell proper, 200 support area, about 5 acres for water management. And water management for this whole entire evolution is a huge undertaking. You have water from demolition of the facilities, so we use a lot of water for dust suppression to keep everything not going into the air. We have water associated just with, rainfall and stuff like that. You've got water in your excavations, for every 1 dump truck of building debris that gets placed, you've got to have about 2.5 dump trucks of soil to go with it for placement and compaction. And so you will have open excavations that you'll have to be dealing with water management on, and then just even the cell itself, and the drainage associated during construction and placement. Water management becomes a very big key factor in the whole process. And it's important because in different scenarios, there could be many water treatment potentials, or maybe a centralized one. So water management becomes a big deal. So a couple things about if we look at 5A and 11. Go to the next slide. So for 11, we're bounded on the west and the north by property boundary, bounded by active power lines on the east. Just below 11 is our operating sanitary landfill now currently. One of the key things about 11 is the depth of groundwater is about 32 feet. So it's fairly shallow, and the closer you go from the plant to the river, it gets lower and lower. The other thing about 11 is we would have to cross Ogden Landing Road for placement of soil and debris. And so right now, with the landfill that we have, the sanitary landfill that we have, we shut that road down, we make our delivery, and then we open it back up. But with this magnitude of operation and the interest in the site, we could possibly run a day shift and a night shift, and just by the sheer number of trucks that's going to be coming and going, then Ogden Landing would probably shut down for the whole duration of the project until we were done. The other thing about 11, with the shallow depth to groundwater, you're going to go taller due to that, and even due to the size and the space available with 11. We'll go to the next slide. And 5B, we have some power lines just to the north and some to the east. It's very closely located to the area that we're going to be remediating and cleaning up, and the buildings we're going to be demoing. The other thing about 5 is it is a candidate to have a centralized water treatment. 11, the leachate capacity for the current isn't big enough. It'll have to have its own leachate, and then plus also we would have to have water treatment and management this side during excavation and building demo. So there will be multiple water treatment facilities. If 11 was a choice that's chosen, we could have a centralized with 5 if 5 moves forward. one of the greatest things about 5 is the depth of groundwater is 54 feet. So 54 versus 32, that helps with the height of how tall it has to be, those kinds of things. Also, you got some space there in 5 where you can kind of fade it out more and longer, things like that, where you don't really have that at 11. So the height of the potential, the cell, if selected, and that's the choice that's chosen during the circle process, would be much taller at 11 versus 5B.
If you go with 5B, you said that extra 200 acres during construction, which way?
Well, it could be either. It could be to the right, it could be to the left. The other thing about kind of 5 is also, regardless, because of the process buildings being so close, like that whole area during demolition and whatnot, regardless of if it's 5 or 11, there will be a boundary set up around all of that with air monitoring and all these things, and that's going to go into some of that space area. So like if 5, you would start at the north and work south, and our first building planned to be demoed is this 37 building. So your cell placement would start here and then work down. So by the time you get down in here, all of this will be gone. But the way that the boundaries work, there'll be a boundary roped off of pretty large size. And so this stuff over here is questionable on being available until we're done anyway, because of the boundary that will be needed to make sure that there's nothing being dispersed in the air during demolition. So even if we go 11, this would be shut down going back and forth because we'd be trucking. This is not available until we're done because of the size of the work zone needed during demolition. And it could be available once we get further along into here, but you're still going to have trucks going and things like that. So I do know that this is one thing about 11, just the pros and cons. Both locations has pros and cons. If you pick 11, you've got all this over here for potential reindustrialization. But the other thing about 11 is that it's going to have to be really tall, and potentially we may have to look at how much waste we're able to place in it. And so there may be some things that, if you're placing less buildings or still the process buildings would come down, but you may not need as much. You just do what your minimum needs were, versus like at 5, demolition of almost this whole side right here, and then you're going to need most of this side over here for soil to go with all of that. And so that allows you to excavate the burial grounds and dig those up, and then all of that volume and debris would go in. But that may not be necessarily the case with 11 because of the limitations of the space available up there size-wise. But that is, a pro for 11, that this could potentially become available. But we still have a lot of work to do on this side because there's several outfalls that run through there, and all of those areas will have to have remediation, excavation, and we're going to have to reroute stormwater runoff and just drainage in general with that side of the site. So it's not where like you could just turn it over tomorrow and be redeveloped.
So did I hear right that 5B allows for the cleanup of the burial ground versus 11?
Potentially.
Potentially. So if we go with 11, ground most likely is off the table. Does that restrict that land for future development if that's not addressed?
It will. Correct.
April, two questions, and they both relate to 11. Knowing that you talked about Ogden Landing, knowing that Oak Ridge built overpasses on roads, any looking at, if you did go to 11, any possibility of building overpass over Ogden Landing, even if it was for 3, 4, 5-year use. The other thing is knowing how federal government loves to come in and take things. Any thought about expanding that site to 11? We talk about here's our boundary, but through eminent domain, could they go in and say, we need more land, or developing that site further?
I mean, those are all potential possibilities. The likelihood for those are probably pretty slim because, most of that's farmland, farm properties, and then just the whole bridge thing. Anything is possible, but I think, from the money standpoint of cost and efficiency there, that's something else that has to be considered with both of these locations. That'll be part of the evaluation as well.
The total acreage of 5B, do you know that plot?
I think that whole rectangle, Myrna, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that 300 acres that whole rectangle is? So this is 300, and then you're looking at the cell itself would only be 100 of that. But the rectangle is drawn as 300 just so you can see the difference between a 300 acre place and what's available here.
So following the completion of that, the 300 acres will always need to be
only 100 of it.
100. So there'll be another 200 roughly that'll be back in play. What's the acreage of the burial ground site? Do you know?
Probably about 200, 250. I mean, it's this whole northwest corner right here.
So really, yes, it's in some prime developable land, but the offset of not getting the burial ground completed and all of that makes it actually in the long run.
Yep.
Do we have anybody actively looking at that part of that parcel of land that will be kind of off limits while the demolition's ongoing?
No, so right now we've got, this is the 3 down here where, GLE has this is a potential future, and then the transfer of parcel 1 comes up to about right here, maybe a little higher. So this is looking to be transferred. You have GLE and then this future industry there. This area, again, we've kind of talked about AI data center, right? And so, I mean, they're at Portsmouth today and doing tours and having conversations. And so, I mean, they could potentially want everything else. So even though parcel 1 transfer stops here, they could potentially want everything else. And so, we talked about the first property request, and then the next one might be for everything else, possibly. It just depends. I have not heard this week the request for information from put the feelers out for AI, and here's some locations. Would any of the AI companies be interested in any of these DOE locations. I haven't really heard a lot this week on that. I do know that that it ended the 7th, May 7th. So I'm sure that stuff will be coming from headquarters here soon from that with questions and requests and things. But I do know Paducah was of interest for several potential companies. So I did hear that, but
basically doing that's not going to slow down any expected future need in the present time of that space.
right. Any other questions? All right, we'll go to the next slide. And so just to see what it might look like, this is going to be driving down Ogden Landing Road. And essentially, if you drove down Ogden Landing today and you're looking around, if you can see the process building, that's about how high, about 80 feet. It'll be 70, but a 10-foot cap. So about 80 feet tall is what it would look like. So I did do some checking because we're going to Fernald on Monday and Tuesday. Monday, we come back Tuesday. Fernald's about 65 feet. But Portsmouth, the cell that they're working will be about 90 feet. So we're kind of in between at 80. And at 80 is preliminary, obviously. But those are all things that factor into the design and construction and things like that. So the process building's about 80 feet, 82. So I think, you know, that helps if you're driving through and just kind of trying to get a visual. You can see the process building. That's how tall in this particular location the possibility could be.
April, do you know how tall the TVA fly ash landfill is out there?
I do not know.
Did I drove by that yesterday?
Yes.
Under.
It's, yeah. Do you know? Christmas, do you know? No. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Question on that Ogden Landing Road on possible number 11 having to shut that down. Is there any housing on that part of the road, or is it?
No, it'll just be the access from the one side to the other that you'll now have to go all the way around to go.
That's a long way around.
It is. It's really long.
For the people on the I guess I was trying to see whether any people, they would have to go the opposite way to leave out of there then.
Yeah, they would go, if they're going back toward the other way, they'd have to go all the way around, or if they lived on this side, they'll have to go all the way around this way. But right in that area, there's no housing because we, like I said, we close it down now for the U landfill that we have whenever we make trips back and forth, and then we just open it back up.
Hey, excuse me. I just Googled and it says the new Paducah TVA landfill on Shawnee East side will be approximately 115 feet tall. You'll drive after and take a look at it.
Any other questions? I'm happy to answer any.
And Becky, road drive.
Nothing else for April? Hey, Brian, anything you want to add or share from EPA on this? Sonia from Kentucky, anything?
No, I don't have anything now.
I don't either.
Yeah. All right. So if there are no more questions, or at least none at this point, and obviously my guess is as we go forward with this, there'll be lots of questions, right? That's a good discussion. We have a handful of recommendations to look at for tonight. All right. So first, on the green sheet of paper, this is a welcome letter. The Environmental Management Program is an office of the Department of Energy. The Department of Energy, as you know, is a cabinet position, manages that. Secretary of Energy sits over that. Within the Department of Energy, there are 5 offices, right? 6 maybe. And so the Office of Environmental Management is one of those. That is a politically appointed position. President Trump has nominated a person for that position. Timothy John Walsh, I believe is his name. He is from Colorado. Ran for office recently as a developer and thing of that nature. And so he is waiting, from what I understand, they're trying to do all of the head of all the offices of the department at one time. So they're gonna get them all situated and have one kind of appointment at all at once is kind of where they're moving towards. He will have to go through a Senate hearing for confirmation on that. So in the event that it all goes swimmingly and he gets confirmed and will some point sit in that position, or whoever ends up sitting in that position, we looked at pulling together kind of a welcome letter. And we combined a couple different things. One is some ideas and some core values that were important to our community. We tried to put those core values and interests in verbiage that aligns with this current administration. We're kind of parroting back to them what they're saying is important and saying those things apply directly here. And if you want to be successful in those things that you say are important, you can maximize those right here, right? And so this is kind of our take at it. Ben, Gay, you both helped with this. You want to jump in?
Yeah, so we, at the chairs meeting, we actually were working on a welcome letter from all of the cabs. Every cab is a little different, has a little different flavor to it. So as we worked through it, we realized they didn't like a lot of the economic development or reindustrialization side of things. And so we really felt like that was important for us as a cab. That's a big part of what we've talked about, is a big value for us. And so we kind of felt like, sending our own letter, our own welcome, come down here, check it out. We're being forward focused, we're being a community trying to speak with one voice. And so that was really kind of why we decided to write our own beyond just the general cabs and that.
Perfect. So I think while the chairs were discussing their recommendation collectively and finding something that all the 8 boards could agree with, Paducah was being represented, and Idaho Falls at a large industry conference, and Sandra Wilson made it known that Paducah is open for business, right? And so we kind of wanted to champion that cause and let them know that if DOE is looking to for AI, for economic development, for reindustrialization things, that we fit that. So, letters before you guys. Questions, thoughts, comments?
One edit.
Yeah.
Mayor of Metropolis has changed. It's Jeffords now, but I don't know.
Okay.
We can find it, but it's not Canada anymore. It did change.
All right, we will get that corrected. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? All right. With that being said, anybody opposed to taking a vote on this recommendation or this letter? It's a letter, right? So, all right. So all those in favor of, we will send this letter out and signed by Ben on behalf of the Citizen Advisory Board. Please raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Any opposed? No. Abstentions? No. All right. So 10-0, that passes by consensus. And we will have this ready, and we will set on it until we hear the confirmation, and we will put it in the in the hopper the next day and get that going. Ben, thanks for your work on that, helping us pull that together. All right, so Jeff, it's Greg Jeffers, 3Gs. I like it. Thanks.
Got you.
All right, so recommendation 2501. So we label recommendations by the year they're passed and the number of them 1 through however many. So that's why it's 2501. Artificial intelligence. So April referred to the fact that the Department of Energy put out a request for information. Is that the right phrase? To see if there was interest in private industry supporting AI data centers, which means somebody had come to them and said, we think that these sites would be beneficial. And so they're saying, all right, let's start the formal process. They'll do an RFI. They'll take that information they gather, probably pull together some type of formal RFP, request for proposal, and kind of go forward from there. So this is the initial first step to see if there's interest between communities and companies, and playing a little bit of dating game here. Can we match make and see what this works? So Paducah was one of the 16 sites listed for multiple reasons. April, you got the 30-second overview on why Paducah is a prime site for.
Yeah, so it's really about the infrastructure and the capabilities that the site has. It's kind of interesting, a data center is tons of computers and they need to be cooled. So, and then that also takes a lot of power. And you look at it, gaseous diffusion plant, those are 2 critical elements that go into when it was operating, is cooling and electrical. And so this AI data center effort is much larger than like Bitcoin. I know we have some Bitcoin here and there in Paducah, and those things, they can turn off, turn on based on, the economy at the moment or whatever. And so this is really bigger than that. So I think it's more in line with the XAI in Memphis that's been going on. And so, you're talking huge buildings full of computer. And so the power capacity for the plant during GDP operations, gaseous diffusion, was about 3,000 megawatts max. So most of the 16 sites that Eric mentioned, they may be able to offer 100 or 200 or significant magnitude order above that with thousands. So I know that I've heard also potentially up to them needing 5,000. So if they need 5,000 megawatts, our capacity was about 3. There's still 2,000 more to go, potentially. So one, GDPs can provide that infrastructure to support the need. The other thing is the cooling. And so water withdrawal becomes very important. And during operations, our water withdrawal from the river was about 30 million gallons per day for recirculating cooling water. And so, we have a permit that has that capacity. We have the equipment to run that capacity, but we're using maybe about 1 million gallons a day, somewhere between 1 and 2-ish currently. So we've reduced quite a bit just because of need, but the availability and the capability is there. So it's really about the infrastructure and the large space and area to put in what they need, of why like Paducah and Fort Smith are of particular interest for AI.
April, did you just identify some of the barriers that are listed in this executive order? It says removing barriers to did you just identify some of them?
Yeah.
Water and
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, I think too, it's
Your call has been forwarded to
They ended up losing power at the building. They're trying to get the meeting back up and going again.
Could be stuck in. Don't do that. Could have stopped.
With that being said, a decision on where to site the evaluation study for a waste cell as part of this ROD is critical to this piece. The ROD is the regulatory record of decision to build a waste cell on site. So EPA asked the CAB to weigh in on what we thought was the best site to do an in-depth study so they could make the best decision. And so that's where we started. And that's kind of what we're trying to stay focused on through this. So the yellow sheet of paper says that the CAB, with the information that we've seen from the meetings we've had, the educational sessions the last few months, that site 5B is the site of choice. Gabe, do you want to speak to this at all? I know this is one of your, on why 5B is the right technical choice. You kind of keep going back to that.
Yeah, I do keep going back to that. It naturally doesn't have a lot of problems that have to be engineered around, like it's got a good depth to groundwater. It doesn't have a creek that has to be rerouted or a road to be closed or anything like that. And like I keep saying, Mad Max scenario, this thing's gonna be here forever. So I think it behooves us to build something that will naturally hold its shape and hold the waste in it for as long as possible. Because, you know, will DOE be here in 500 years to fix it if it leaks? No. Now think about where we were 500 years ago. So that's why, to me, building something that in a location that naturally meets the requirements a little better is the only way to go.
Thanks. So the recommendation laid out before you, kind of coming out of our discussion at the last educational session, is that we recommend DOE pursue site 5B for the engineering evaluation for a waste cell. That completing all the regulatory steps and the due diligence and making sure that it meets all the requirements, that they continue to be in contact with the board and seek input and evaluate and you know, guidance and advice from us throughout this, and make sure that they're in line with what works for the community. And then use this as a means to speed up the cleanup process, be able to transfer property, and facilitate the reindustrialization of the Paducah site. All of this kind of means. So with that, thoughts, questions, comments from you guys?
I'll say that originally really had hoped that 11 would work. Just to keep as much space there in the original process area available as possible for future development. I think that's what the community wants. But I think 5B is the smartest choice for all the reasons Gabe shared. But also from a standpoint of, I know maybe the burial grounds could be addressed with 11 still. Maybe they couldn't be. You know, you lose 100 acres, you add 200 for sure back into the mix. It seems like a good offset. It also seems like it takes into account the community from the standpoint of the road, having to relocate infrastructure, things of that nature. To me, although I wish that 11 had a few more things going for it, I think 5B makes it. Is it 5B or 5A? 5B makes the most sense.
Other thoughts, questions, comments?
I did raise a few concerns just in the executive committee about, I agree that waste cell makes the most sense for our site. I think we all kind of came to that for sure. I had questions on 5B just of previous CAB recommendations and just, is it best for, I think it is the best for the waste cell. I think it makes the most sense there. And the other previous CAB recommendations a lot referenced that it probably would be the best spot, but isn't the best spot for reindustrialization as well. So I just wanted to kind of share that that was a concern of mine. I do appreciate number 3 on the recommendations, that there is more input, there is community input on this. But just since this is where we talk about these things, just wanted to share kind of that was a concern of mine, is did we have enough of the community input for us to be selecting, or I shouldn't say selecting a site, to be recommending a site just yet. At the same time, and April, sharing the AI stuff is timely. I mean, and so I think there is definitely a balance there. But at the end of the day, we as a CAB will be going to our community members, and I think if we don't kind of talk through things here, then we're going to be getting questions on the other end. So I just kind of wanted to just throw that out there, just as us as a whole, for how we vote.
Well, visually, 5B will be less impactful also, correct? First of all, because of its length, and second of all, because it sits in away from the road, whereas 11 is right there on the road. It will be a notable change on that Alden Lane when you look up and see that. So, I mean, I'm with you guys as far as that. 11 was looking the best when we first started to us, but after you filter everything out, 5B is obviously the strongest place.
So as you guys were talking, I was reminded that when we started this discussion with DOE a decade ago, like we had our first go around with the CAB with this, and kind of Gabe was involved, Brian Begley, Marina was involved in that. The site DOE said was the prime site was 3A. 3A was the best geologic site, and the CAB said, wait, that's the best economic development site. And DOE said, okay, well, we totally understand that. And now they're in the process of transferring that property for industry, right? So I just want you guys to know that what you say is heard and listened, and this is a continual dialogue, right? But there is the need to make sure that we choose a good technical site, and kind of make sure that we're being responsible from that perspective as well. Other thoughts, questions, comments?
That move for approval.
Second.
All right. All those in favor of passing recommendation 2502, please raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All those opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so it's 801 with 1 abstention, and that passes. Perfect. Thank you, guys. This is, I know we like to say we get together and hang out and have a good time, and I love spending time with you guys, but passing advice and recommendations is what we are chartered to do. It's what we're scoped for, is to provide this input to April, to have this dialogue, and to go back and forth. And, these are recommendations that as she and Bill go and they start laying out their plan going forward, as they start requesting additional dollars, budgeting for this next coming year starting to take place. These are things they can use to say we're all on board and we have a path forward. That's a big deal. All right. Is there anyone from the public that would like to provide comment at this time? Okay, giving you options. All right. As we head into final comment, we'll give you guys anything you guys want to say in just a second, but we wanted to take just a second. You guys know that as board members, you serve 3 2-year terms. And in June, before our next scheduled board meeting, both Don Barger and Clint Combs, their 6 years will terminate. And so we have been fortunate enough to have 2 really tremendous community leaders serve on the board. Don for as chair. What is it? What do you call the first husband of the CAB for 20 years?
Been on the board now for 12 years.
You have, and I've had the opportunity to travel around the country with him and see DOE sites, and as he's traveled with Rini, and then I don't know how many miles you have put on your truck, but it is
over 23,000 miles.
I had a feeling you knew.
Yes, you did know. I drove to every site. Everybody else flies. I drive. So I drove
to Hanford?
I have driven to every site.
Wow.
So it was on your way to Hanford where you stopped and found the carousel, right? That was in the town Rini grew up in.
Yep.
Like it was in somewhere along the way, and he stopped and took her to her childhood carousel.
She grew up along Lake Michigan. Carousel was there when she was growing up. It is now in Richland, Washington. And so she was able to ride the same carousel again.
Got some brownies on that.
So
as the driver, that's my job, is to scout out the route to see what's along the way.
So also, John writes about his travels and what he sees while he's driving, and shares it with, that he served for years as a, not only teacher, but a pastor. And so with his congregations and lots of folks, and they follow along as his travels, and he writes these great little stories and tells about what he's seen and what he's done. And it's really just one of the many gifts he gives to so many people. And of course, Don has been recently particularly involved with the rebuilding of the church in Mayfield, the Presbyterian Church, correct?
Yes.
Make sure I get that right. Yeah, and so was pastor down there, and then just giving them new life and starting up there and fighting the government and FEMA on that front, trying to get that squared away, and it's just been truly amazing. And then Clint, we were so lucky. We were looking for bright young folks in the community to jump in, and Clint jumped in, and he is, not only with his insurance day job, but with his education and economic development, has provided a really great, you saw tonight, he has fantastic questions, like thinking 2 steps ahead of all along and trying to think this through and figure it out. Awesome to watch him to grow in. Clint's also done some traveling with us and gone to the chairs meeting, went to Portsmouth with us and saw all that, and has sat on the executive committee for multiple rounds and been really an active member of the board. And so we have small little gifts for you guys, plaques that say thank you. So Ben, if you would come up in April, if you guys would like to, maybe we'll just do that. I think what they're going to do is they're going to get a picture of each of you separately with Ben and April, and then one of you, all 4 of you together, if that's okay. And then after they take your pictures, if you guys want to say anything, but while they're taking photos, anything, we'll open it up to you guys, anything you'd like to share. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you'll be here.
Yeah, Lawrence here. Hold it up on a couple of my credentials. 3, 2, 1. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Be careful, I dropped it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right.
Yeah. All right. So while Rini was on the board and we were waiting for her to finish up so we could have that concept together, he would read a newspaper article about DOE across the country, and he would shoot me a message, hey, did you see it? And so he was like so well informed, but he stepped in.
Thank you, guys.
So Don, Clint, anything you guys want to say on your
I think on my behalf, what I would say to the board and all the people as I look around, a lot of changes over the years. When you've worked here, so many people have come, served, and gone, but we've always got new people. And so there is nothing, especially in retirement, when we retired, didn't know what we were going to do in retirement. This was never on our bucket list at all. So if we could blame anybody, it would be Ralph Young.
Right.
We got Rini involved, and then got me involved in all of that. But it's just been a wonderful opportunity to meet people across the United States. Each has been talked about. Each of our sites falls under the same umbrella, but each one is uniquely different. And until you travel to some of these sites, if all you've ever seen is Paducah, you haven't seen anything. Sorry to tell you that, April, but
No.
when it takes you a day to get from one town to the site in Nevada, or you just go for miles in Hanford to get there, you realize how immense when we talk, square, how many acres our site is, they talk about square miles. And you think some of these sites are as big, and part of my research for one of my documents was, think of Graves County. Size of that county is the size of some of these sites. So immense and all of that. So without CAB, I never would have had the opportunity to do this. Very thankful. Meeting people like Steve and working with him and all of that. So wonderful opportunity. So if you know somebody who might be interested, pass that name on so that the next people are ready to go.
I would say Steve's actually one of the reasons why I'm here today. So I got the opportunity through the chamber to go and tour DOE site, and I was if you've noticed tonight, I asked a couple questions here and there, and I think Steve was just like, "Would you please shut up?" and then and maybe consider joining the CAB. No, Steve was really good. So Steve indulged all of my questions and was very nice to encourage me, because I didn't realize this existed. And so it's hard to believe it went by as quickly as it did. I think COVID has helped speed that up a little bit. But what I would say to the board, this is probably the most exciting part of my entire time with CAB has been this last few months. I enjoyed all of it, but you guys are at the point now where you're going to be able to really make an impact, and tonight was a big part of that. And I would say, I would encourage you, we're at just a really unique time with the AI stuff and things of that nature, at least with the appears to be the administration's interest in this site, to really capitalize on that. And I would encourage this group to really push to make that momentum so strong that any changes would be hard to stop the progress here, because this could be a time to really really move the needle. What I thought I might be dead before this piece ever got finished, and we're talking about seriously in most, could be most of our lifetime here, seeing some real development. I'm not going to point out people, but I would just encourage, but also to Vince's point and to others, of course, I don't have to tell this board that, we're here to represent our fellow citizens, and so do so in a manner that is representative of them, and we've got good folks at the DOE and contractors that won't lead us astray, but encourage you to come in and ask good questions and be skeptical and just uncover what's best for the community. But just really encourage you to just keep the momentum going. We're really excited, really bummed out that this turned out to be my last year. Didn't realize that in the time frame, but just appreciate this board indulging me in the last 6 years, and look forward to everybody else seeing what you do.
All right. Any other comments from the board?
Now, you're going to have your wife do a rewind, so nope.
No, that's the thing. Unlike a lot of boards, you can serve 6 years or whatever. You take a year off, required, but then you can come back on. DOE says, "Thank you, your years are up." Doesn't mean that I can't come back and make public comment. You laugh at that. Been on here 6 years, served as chair a great many of those years. Not one time in 6 years did we have public comment. Most of the time, we never had public. And so I don't know whether we're a well-kept secret, which I hope not. But we serve a very vital role, and I'm not sure the public realizes the role that we play. And so whatever we can do to get the public more aware of how critical this is to the longevity of whatever happens out of the site is important. So I'm gonna come back and sit in the back as public, and I'm gonna sign that form and say, I'll go. And I. And then so when Ben says, are there any public comment, I'm gonna stand up.
So not you, anyone else?
Anybody else? I don't say anybody else. If nothing else, I wanna come back because Haley cooks a great meal.
She's the best. She's the best. So Don and I were in, along with several other people, were in Hanford, and we were preparing for a meeting out there, and it had been a build-up. And so they were talking about taking us on site, and they were like, hey, you have to wear shoes, closed-toed. And so the list, it was just like, hey, you need closed-toed shoes. It was like, you need closed-toed shoes. You cannot have high heels. You cannot have flip-flops. You cannot have sandals. You cannot have, I was like, closed-toed? And they just kept going down this list of shoes you couldn't have. And I'd had about all that I could take, right? And I was like, well, you didn't say ballet slippers. Can I wear ballet slippers? And they were like, this stupid little kid, right? So we're sitting at the reception one night and in Hanford, and large group of people from all over the country, some fairly important folks. And Don stands up and says, hey, I'd like to just kind of announcement. Said, you know, for those of you that didn't know, Eric stood up and said, you know, he would wear ballet slippers to the site tour. And I happened to have with me a pair of size 13 men's ballet slippers, and he gave them to me. And I was stuck with no choice but to wear them the rest of the night. And it was the worst, and I will never forget that, Don, and I love you so much for it.
Well, let me top your Hanford, and I don't really remember this, because Rini was on the board, she was sitting at the table there, so I was along to the right.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up needing a root canal,
Mm-hmm.
and it went bad. I found a military doctor who was there visiting with his dad who owned the practice, and so as he was drilling, and so ended up having to pull the tooth and all of this. So, but you know, I've only had teeth pulled by the military, you know, when I served in the military, and then by a military dentist, so and all that. But the fortunate thing was Dave Borak, who was in charge of them at that point, he was nice enough to eat my beef fillet for me that night. So, you know, EM people make sacrifices in your behalf. So yes,
Fantastic.
so
And I know Clint's stepping away, but he will be stepping in as president of the Market House Theater Board. If you're like this, I hear it's a shoe in. Right? He has bought all the votes that are necessary, so it's great to see you guys. Like, it's so fantastic. Like, so really looking forward to see what you guys do down there. All right, anybody? I know it's raining and it's cold. Everybody wants to go. Anything else from you guys? All right, Chairman, let's do it.